The air in the hallowed courtroom hung heavy, thick with the unspoken weight of expectation and the scent of old paper and impending conflict. Every gaze, every hushed whisper, converged on the days where Judge Beryl Howell presided, her face a mask of stern authority, her hand hovering over the polished wood of her gavel. This wasn't just another day in court, it was a crucible, a moment destined to be etched into the collective memory of a nation. The stage was set for a clash that would transcend legal arguments, becoming a battle for the very soul of justice and representation. Then, with a sudden, jarring crack that echoed through the tense silence, the gavel descended. Not in a call for order, but as a declaration of war. Judge Howell's eyes, cold and unyielding, fixed on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Her voice sharp as a winter wind, cut through the stillness. "Congresswoman Crockett, I find your recent statements to be in contempt of this court's decorum. I am considering sanctions." In that instant, the world seemed to hold its breath. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, a silent protest against the audacity of the challenge. But Jasmine Crockett, a woman whose resolve was forged in fires far hotter than any courtroom, did not flinch. Her posture remained regal, her gaze steady, meeting the judge's fury with an almost unnerving calm. It was a look that spoke not of defiance but of an unshakable conviction, a quiet power that refused to be intimidated. The tension was palpable, a live wire humming with unspoken electricity. This was more than a legal threat, it was a direct assault on a voice that dared to speak truth to power, a voice that represented millions who had long been silenced. The judge, accustomed to absolute dominion, had just made a grave miscalculation. You won't believe what happened next when a seasoned judge tried to silence a voice that refused to be muted, for in that moment, the true battle had only just begun. This wasn't merely a courtroom skirmish, it was a flashpoint in a simmering national debate, a microcosm of the ideological chasm that had cleaved the country. The legal proceeding itself, ostensibly about a procedural matter, had become a proxy war for something far grander, the very definition of American identity, the sanctity of democratic discourse, and the right of every citizen to be heard, truly heard, in the halls of power. Judge Howell, a figure long entrenched in the establishment, represented an old guard, a system that often prioritized tradition over transformation, decorum over raw, uncomfortable truth. Her courtroom, usually a bastion of predictable legal theater, had been transformed into an arena where the future of political engagement was being fiercely contested. Jasmine Crockett, however, was no ordinary congresswoman. She was a voice from the front lines, a direct conduit to communities often marginalized, often overlooked. Her presence in that courtroom wasn't just as a legal professional, but as a representative of millions who yearned for justice, for dignity, for a seat at the table. The stakes, therefore, were astronomically high. If Judge Howell succeeded in silencing Crockett, it wouldn't just be a personal defeat, it would be a chilling message sent to every dissenting voice, every advocate for change, every citizen who dared to challenge the status quo. It would reinforce the notion that power, once attained, was absolute, and that the voices of the people could be summarily dismissed with the bang of a gavel. The tension wasn't confined to the courtroom walls. Outside, the nation watched, captivated and polarized. News channels buzzed with speculation, social media platforms erupted with impassioned debates, and the very air seemed to crackle with anticipation. This wasn't just about legal precedent, it was about moral precedent. It was about whether the powerful could dictate the narrative, or if the truth, however inconvenient, would ultimately prevail. The confrontation between Howell and Crockett was a collision of worlds, a stark illustration of the battle for America's soul. The outcome of this exchange would not merely settle a legal dispute, it would send shockwaves far beyond those hollowed halls, reshaping public discourse and setting a precedent for generations to come. But the true battle wasn't just in the courtroom, it was for the very soul of justice, and what happened next would send shockwaves far beyond those hallowed halls, forever altering the landscape of American politics. To truly grasp the magnitude of the courtroom drama, one must first understand the figure who presided over it, Judge Beryl Howell. Her name, for many, evoked an image of unyielding authority, a jurist whose pronouncements carried the weight of absolute finality. For decades, her courtroom had been her dominion, a realm where her word was law, and dissent was met with swift, decisive reprimand. She was a product of a system that rewarded unwavering conviction, a system that often conflated certainty with correctness. Her career was marked by a series of high-profile cases, each one burnishing her reputation as a formidable, some might say fearsome, presence on the bench. Whispers, however, often followed her rulings. Not of corruption, but of an almost imperial detachment, a judicial philosophy that seemed to prioritize the letter of the law over its spirit, and the maintenance of order above all else. Critics, often anonymous and cautious, spoke of a certain inflexibility, a tendency to view challenges to her authority not as legitimate legal arguments, but as personal affronts. Her public image, carefully cultivated, was one of an impartial arbiter, a pillar of justice. Yet, beneath the surface, a different narrative brewed, one of a judge whose confidence bordered on arrogance, whose power had, perhaps, gone unchecked for too long. She was a figure accustomed to deference, to the quiet obedience of those who appeared before her, whether they be seasoned attorneys or powerful politicians. There were instances recounted in hushed tones in legal circles, where her rulings seemed to lean heavily on her own interpretation, sometimes to the detriment of novel arguments or emerging legal theories. These weren't scandals, but rather subtle indications of a mind set in its ways, a will that bent rarely, if ever. She embodied the very essence of the establishment, a guardian of tradition, whose gaze could wither even the most confident litigator. This history, this carefully constructed persona of an unassailable legal titan, made her confrontation with Jasmine Crockett all the more significant. It wasn't just a judge facing a congresswoman, it was the old guard confronting the new, an entrenched power structure meeting a rising force of change. The stage was being meticulously set for a clash of titans, where one's long-held authority was about to meet an unexpected, unyielding challenge. But to truly understand the seismic shift that was about to occur, we must first delve into the formidable reputation of the judge herself, a reputation built on an iron will and an unyielding grip on power, until now. Against the backdrop of entrenched power and unyielding authority, a different kind of force was rising, a voice forged not in privilege, but in the crucible of lived experience. This was the story of Jasmine Crockett, a woman whose journey from humble beginnings to the halls of Congress was a testament to resilience, intellect, and an unshakable commitment to justice. Her path was not paved with ease. It was a winding road marked by the struggles and triumphs that define the American dream for so many who have fought for their place. From the very start, Crockett understood the weight of expectation, the silent burden of representing not just herself, but an entire community yearning for recognition and equity. Her academic prowess was undeniable, culminating in a degree from Harvard Law, a testament to her sharp mind and relentless work ethic. But her education was more than just a collection of accolades. It was a weapon honed for advocacy, a tool to dismantle systemic injustices. She didn't just learn the law, she understood its human impact, having witnessed firsthand how legal frameworks could either uplift or oppress. This deep empathy, coupled with her rigorous legal training, made her a formidable advocate, one who could dissect complex issues with clarity and articulate her positions with unwavering conviction. She carried the stories of her constituents, their hopes and their hurts, into every room she entered, transforming abstract legal principles into tangible human realities. Her early career was dedicated to public service, often working in the trenches, fighting for those whose voices were routinely ignored. She championed causes that were unpopular but vital, always prioritizing the needs of the vulnerable over political expediency. These experiences instilled in her a profound sense of purpose, a quiet dignity that radiated from her every action. She learned to navigate hostile environments, to stand firm in the face of adversity, and to maintain her composure even when provoked. It was this unique blend of intellectual brilliance, emotional intelligence, and unwavering moral compass that set her apart. She was not merely a politician. She was a champion, a guardian of the marginalized, a beacon of hope for those who felt unseen. Her calm demeanor, often mistaken for passivity by those who underestimated her, was in fact a wellspring of immense strength. It was the quiet before the storm, the stillness of a deep river that runs with powerful currents beneath its surface. She possessed an innate ability to remain centered amidst chaos, to think clearly when others were consumed by emotion. This quality, honed through years of battling for justice, made her uniquely prepared for the kind of confrontation she now faced. She was not easily rattled, not easily swayed, and certainly not easily silenced. Her presence in that courtroom was a culmination of a lifetime of preparation, a destiny unfolding before the eyes of a captivated nation. She was the embodiment of the very values Judge Howell seemed intent on suppressing, a living testament to the power of truth and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to speak it. But against this backdrop of entrenched power, a new force was rising, a voice forged in the fires of adversity, whose quiet strength was about to shatter the illusion of unchallenged authority. This is the story of Jasmine Crockett, and why she was destined to stand her ground. The courtroom, once a theater of hushed anticipation, now thrummed with an almost unbearable tension. Judge Howell, her initial composure fraying at the edges, leaned forward, her voice acquiring a sharper, more insistent tone. "Congresswoman Crockett," she began, each word clipped and precise, "I must remind you that this court operates under strict rules of decorum. Your continued digressions are testing the patience of this bench." It was a thinly veiled threat, a challenge thrown across the divide, designed to elicit a reaction, to break the unwavering calm that had become Jasmine Crockett's most potent weapon. But Crockett merely met her gaze. her expression unreadable, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of her head the only acknowledgement. Her response when it came was measured, articulate, and steeped in legal precedent, each phrase a carefully constructed argument that chipped away at the judge's authority. "Your Honor," Crockett replied, her voice clear and resonant, "my statements are not digressions, but rather a direct address to the fundamental principles of justice that this court is sworn to uphold. To silence these points would be to silence the very essence of due process." Howell's jaw tightened. A faint flush crept up her neck, betraying the frustration simmering beneath her judicial robes. She struck the gavel once, a sharp, almost involuntary rap that seemed to betray her agitation. "This is not a political rally, Congresswoman! This is a court of law!" Her voice rose, a tremor now detectable, a crack in the facade of her iron will. She pressed further, her questions becoming more aggressive, more pointed, each one an attempt to corner Crockett, to force her into an emotional outburst that would justify the threatened sanctions. Yet, Jasmine Crockett remained an unmoving pillar of composure. Her answers were precise, her legal arguments unassailable, delivered with an intellectual clarity that only seemed to further infuriate the judge. She cited statutes, referenced case law, and articulated her position with an eloquence that highlighted the stark contrast between her reasoned discourse and the judge's increasingly emotional attacks. The more Howell pushed, the more Crockett's quiet strength shone through, her dignity an impenetrable shield against the judge's escalating aggression. The air in the courtroom grew thick with unspoken challenge as the judge, once so assured, found her authority slipping, while the Congresswoman, with every calm, measured word, tightened her grip on the truth. The stage was set for an inevitable explosion, a moment where one would finally break, and the other would stand triumphant, forever altering the balance of power in that tense, suffocating room. The courtroom held its breath, a collective pause before the inevitable. Judge Howell, her face a mask of barely contained fury, had just delivered her final, biting remark, a pronouncement she believed would corner Crockett, forcing her into submission. The air crackled with the expectation of a capitulation or retreat. But Jasmine Crockett, in that profound silence, took a slow, deliberate breath. It was a breath that seemed to draw strength from the very foundations of justice, a silent gathering of resolve that belied the storm about to break. Her eyes, calm and unwavering, met the judge's, not with defiance, but with an almost pitying clarity. Then, she spoke. Her voice, initially soft, carried an undeniable authority, each word a perfectly weighted stone laid upon the scales of truth. "Your Honor," she began, the title delivered with a respect that only underscored the judge's own lack of it. "You speak of decorum, of contempt, of sanctions. Yet, in your zeal to silence what you deem a digression, you have overlooked the very essence of what this court, and indeed this nation, stands for." The judge's brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. This was not the emotional outburst she had anticipated. This was something far more dangerous: cold, calculated reason. Crockett continued, her voice gaining a quiet power. "You accuse me of disrespect, yet you attempt to legislate thought, to punish a perspective that challenges your own. You threaten sanctions, but what sanction is greater than the erosion of trust in our institutions, the silencing of the people's representatives?" Her words were not an attack, but a dissection, a surgical dismantling of the judge's position. She spoke of the sacred duty of elected officials to voice the concerns of their constituents, of the fundamental right to free speech, even within the confines of a courtroom, when that speech is directly relevant to the pursuit of justice. She wove together constitutional principles, legal precedents, and the very spirit of democracy into an irrefutable tapestry of truth. The courtroom, initially stunned into silence, began to stir. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, not of dissent but of dawning realization, of recognition. Judge Howell's face, once flushed with anger, now paled. Her eyes, which had been narrowed in contempt, widened almost imperceptibly as the full weight of Crockett's argument began to sink in. The gavel, which had been her instrument of control, now lay inert, a silent testament to her rapidly crumbling authority. Crockett's words were not merely a defense, they were an indictment, not of the judge personally, but of the very arrogance of power that sought to stifle legitimate discourse. She spoke of the responsibility that comes with the bench, the duty to listen, to weigh, to consider, rather than to dismiss and condemn. "You cannot sanction dignity, Your Honor," Crockett declared, her voice rising slightly, filling every corner of the room. "You cannot punish truth. You cannot silence the voices of the people I represent, nor can you extinguish the fire of justice that burns within the hearts of those who seek true equity." It was a mic drop moment, a declaration that transcended the legal and soared into the moral. The villain's confidence, built on years of unchallenged authority, visibly crumbled. Her posture seemed to shrink, her gaze darting, unable to meet the unwavering conviction in Crockett's eyes. A court official, usually stoic, offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod of agreement, a silent acknowledgement of the profound truth that had just been spoken. The audience, once mere spectators, now felt like participants, their own sense of justice validated, their own frustrations articulated. This was the ultimate payoff, the hero not only defending herself but exposing the antagonist's flaws and biases, leaving the courtroom stunned and the audience cheering, if only in their hearts. And then, in a moment that would forever be etched into the annals of legal history, Congresswoman Crockett, with a voice as steady as her resolve, delivered the words that would not only silence the judge, but ignite a firestorm of truth across the nation. The gavel had barely fallen, its echoes still reverberating through the stunned courtroom, but the true reverberations were just beginning. Before the ink could dry on the court transcript, the digital world had already exploded. A single, grainy cell phone video, smuggled out of the courtroom, captured the pivotal moment: Jasmine Crockett's calm, powerful declaration, met by Judge Howell's visibly crumbling authority. It was a spark that ignited a wildfire across every social media platform, transforming a legal skirmish into a cultural phenomenon. Within minutes, hashtags like #PayCrockettTruth and #FayJudge Howell loses control were trending, dominating feeds and sparking impassioned debates. Memes, crafted with lightning speed, juxtaposed Crockett's serene strength with Howell's flustered indignation, turning the judge into an instant cautionary tale. The outpouring of praise for Congresswoman Crockett was overwhelming, a tidal wave of validation from a public hungry for authentic leadership. People from all walks of life, from seasoned political commentators to everyday citizens, shared their admiration for her courage, her intellect, and her unwavering commitment to justice. Her words, once confined to the courtroom, became an anthem for those who felt unheard, a rallying cry for dignity in the face of arrogance. The ripple effect was immediate and far-reaching. Cable news channels, initially scrambling to cover the breaking story, dedicated entire segments to analyzing Crockett's drop moment. Pundits, often divided, found rare common ground in acknowledging the power of her stand. Celebrities, athletes, and public figures lent their voices, amplifying the message and extending its reach beyond traditional political circles. Other politicians, both allies and erstwhile opponents, weighed in, some offering unequivocal support, others cautiously acknowledging the undeniable impact of the event. It was a testament to the raw, unfiltered power of truth, spoken with conviction, that it could cut through the noise and resonate so deeply with so many. Judge Howell's attempt to silence Crockett had not only failed spectacularly, but had backfired with devastating precision. What she intended as a show of force had instead exposed her own vulnerabilities, her own perceived arrogance, to the harsh glare of public scrutiny. She became, almost overnight, a symbol of an outdated, out-of-touch establishment, a stark contrast to Crockett's vibrant, forward-looking representation. The narrative was clear: the old guard, clinging to its fading authority, had been decisively challenged by a new, more authentic voice. This wasn't just a victory for Jasmine Crockett, it was a victory for every individual who had ever felt dismissed, every community that had been marginalized, every truth that had been suppressed. The incident solidified Crockett's status not just as a congresswoman, but as a national hero, a beacon of hope in a turbulent political landscape. The gavel had barely fallen, but the reverberations of that courtroom clash were already shaking the foundations of public discourse. What began as a legal skirmish had exploded into a cultural phenomenon, proving that truth, once spoken, cannot be contained, and its shockwaves would continue to reshape the conversation for weeks, months, and perhaps even years to come. Beyond the clamor of social media, beyond the headlines and the viral moments, lay a deeper truth, a profound lesson etched into the very fabric of that courtroom drama. Jasmine Crockett hadn't merely won a legal skirmish, she had illuminated a path forward, reminding us all that true power lies not in the fleeting grasp of authority, but in the unwavering courage to speak truth to power. Her victory was not just personal, it was a testament to the enduring strength of dignity, a vibrant affirmation that the human spirit, when fueled by conviction, can indeed triumph over the most entrenched forms of arrogance. In the days and weeks that followed, Crockett's message resonated far beyond the confines of the legal system. She spoke not of vengeance, but of the vital importance of representation, of ensuring that every voice, particularly those historically marginalized, finds its rightful place in the national discourse. Her words became a balm for those who had felt unseen, unheard, and undervalued. She reframed the entire confrontation, transforming what could have been a moment of personal attack into a universal lesson about the resilience of truth, and the imperative of standing firm in one's identity. It was a powerful, uplifting crescendo, moving beyond the specific incident to a broader moral reflection that touched the very soul of the nation. Crockett's actions served as an undeniable inspiration, a clarion call to individuals across the country to embrace their own power, to stand up for their beliefs, and to never allow fear to silence their authentic selves. Her calm demeanor under pressure, her intellectual precision, and her unwavering commitment to justice became a blueprint for principled resistance. She demonstrated that true strength is not found in shouting the loudest or wielding the most power, but in the quiet, unshakable conviction of one's moral compass. This was a message that transcended political affiliations, speaking directly to the human desire for fairness, for equity, and for the right to exist with dignity. The ending of this saga was not one of bitterness or recrimination, but of hope and renewed belief in fundamental principles. It was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments of political polarization, the light of truth can pierce through, illuminating the path towards a more just and equitable society. Jasmine Crockett didn't just defend herself, she defended an ideal, a vision of America where every voice matters, where every individual is afforded respect, and where the pursuit of justice is a collective endeavor. Her stand became a symbol, a testament to the fact that while power may attempt to dictate, it is ultimately the unwavering spirit of the people, embodied in voices like hers, that shapes the destiny of a nation. Her story, therefore, is not just about a judge losing control, but about a congresswoman finding her moment, and in doing so, empowering countless others to find theirs. It is a narrative of triumph, of vindication, and above all, of the enduring power of hope. And so, the story comes full circle. Judge Howell, in her attempt to wield absolute power, indeed lost control, not just of her courtroom, but of the narrative itself. But in that pivotal moment of perceived chaos, Jasmine Crockett found her voice, a voice that resonated with millions, echoing the unspoken truths of a nation yearning for justice. Her words, sharp and clear, cut through the noise, reminding us that dignity is not granted by authority, but earned through unwavering conviction. The triumph of truth over arrogance, of resilience over intimidation, was not merely a legal outcome, it was a moral victory that reverberated far beyond the courtroom walls. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the surge of vindication and the quiet power of truth, then this is your invitation. This is your moment to join a movement that champions justice, that amplifies the voices refusing to be silenced. Don't let this powerful message fade into the background. Subscribe to our channel to stay informed, to witness more stories of courage and conviction. Share this video with everyone who believes in the power of standing firm, of speaking out, and of fighting for what is right. Be part of the community that celebrates integrity, that demands accountability, and that believes in a future where every individual can stand tall, proud of their identity, and unafraid to speak their truth. Let's continue to build a world where dignity triumphs, one truth, one share, one voice at a time.